The Magi, seekers of the promised king. Chapter 1. Watchers of the sky. Long before the child was born in Bethlehem, there were men who spent their lives looking upward. They were scholars, not shepherds, astronomers, not kings in the political sense. In the ancient lands of the East, likely Persia or Babylon, these men were known as Magi. They studied the movements of the heavens with patient discipline, believing that the skies told stories written by God himself. To them, stars were not mere lights. They were signs. One night, the familiar order of the heavens changed. A new star appeared, brighter, purposeful, unlike any they had seen before. It did not wander like a comet, nor flicker like a common light. It stood, commanding attention. The Magi understood at once. This was no ordinary phenomenon. This was a signal tied to prophecy. Ancient texts passed down through generations, prophecies that spoke of a ruler, a king unlike any other, rising from the land of Israel. They studied, they debated, they prayed, and then they prepared to leave. Chapter 2. The long road west. The journey westward was neither brief nor easy. The Magi traveled with caravan supplies, guards, servants, crossing deserts where the horizon never changed and nights were bitterly cold. Each step carried risk. Bandits were common. Sandstorms erased paths. Yet the star remained their guide, visible night after night, unwavering. This was not curiosity that drove them forward. It was conviction. They carried gifts with intention, not extravagance. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh, each chosen with meaning, though they themselves may not have fully understood how deeply symbolic those gifts would become. Gold, fit for a king. Frankincense, used in worship. Myrrh, and oil for burial. Even before they reached the child, the story of his life was quietly being told. Chapter 3. A king disturbed. When the Magi arrived in Jerusalem, they expected celebration. Instead, they found fear. They entered the royal court of King Herod, asking a simple question that echoed like thunder through the palace halls. "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." Herod's smile did not reach his eyes. Herod was a ruler obsessed with power, haunted by threats both real and imagined. The idea of a newborn king unsettled him deeply. Quietly, he summoned the chief priests and scribes, demanding to know where the Messiah was to be born. They answered from prophecy, Bethlehem of Judea. Herod turned back to the Magi, masking his fear with courtesy. He asked when the star had first appeared. Then he sent them on their way with false humility. "Go and search carefully for the child," he said. "When you find him, report back to me so that I too may go and worship." The Magi departed, unaware of the darkness that had just been set in motion. Chapter 4. The star stands still that night. The star appeared again. It was no longer distant. It moved with purpose, guiding them beyond Jerusalem, down the road to Bethlehem. Then, in a moment that would live forever in sacred memory, the star stopped hovering over a humble house. The Magi were overwhelmed with joy. This was not a palace. There were no guards, no banners, no throne. Inside was a young mother, a quiet father, and a child, small, fragile, ordinary in appearance. Yet, the moment they entered, they knew. They fell to their knees, not before a ruler who demanded fear, but before a child who invited reverence. In silence and awe, they opened their treasures. Gold glimmered in the low light. Frankincense released its sacred scent. Myrrh rested heavily in their hands. They worshipped not because they understood everything, but because they recognized truth when they saw it. Chapter 5. A warning in the night. That night, God spoke again. The Magi were warned in a dream not to return to Herod. The message was clear and urgent. The child was in danger. When morning came, they changed their route and departed quietly, slipping back into the long roads of the East by another way. They carried no fame with them, no proclamation, only the memory of a moment that had changed them forever. Herod, realizing he had been deceived, descended into rage. But the Magi were already gone. Chapter 6. The legacy of the seekers. The Magi vanish from history as quietly as they appeared. Scripture does not record their names, their number, or their final fate. Tradition later called them kings and numbered them as three, but the truth is simpler and more powerful. They were seekers. They were foreigners, outsiders, men who did not belong to Israel, yet were drawn by God to recognize his Son. Their story reminds the world that the arrival of Christ was never meant for one people alone, but for all nations. They did not preach. They did not stay. They did not rule. They sought. They found. They worshipped. They obeyed. And then they went home changed. Epilogue. The star still calls. The star no longer hangs in the sky, but its call remains. The story of the Magi is not about how far they traveled, nor how much they brought. It is about who was willing to seek truth, even when it led them away from comfort, certainty, and power. They remind us that God often reveals his greatest treasures not to those who expect them, but to those who are willing to look up, follow the light, and kneel when they arrive.